Welcome to this week's Art Talk episode 2, Learning to Trust. Now, have you ever sat in complete silence and felt peace in your body only to panic a few seconds later? Something like your nervous system doesn't quite trust the calm within you. Today, I'm going to talk about those subtle signals your body hasn't learned to trust and how art, the simple act of painting, can help you reconnect with them. Not through fixing, but through feeling, through noticing, through creating. Okay, so let's go deeper. Now, what are the subtle signals? We talk a lot about triggers, but we don't talk enough about glimmers. Those micro moments of safety, of calm, of joy, of peace. The soft breath when the world quiets. The way your chest opens after a kind word. The warmth in your belly when someone sees you, truly sees you. That kind of calm. But for many of us, those sensations feel foreign, unsafe, and unfamiliar. Because if you've ever grown up in survival mode, which most of us have, your body was trained to look for danger, not peace. It learned to tolerate chaos, not calm, to brace for loss, not lean into love. So why do we reject peace? It's a strange thing, isn't it? To want peace, you reject it when it finally arrives. I remember sitting in my studio, everything quiet, brush in hand, and suddenly a flood of anxiety. Why? Because the quiet was unfamiliar. It didn't match the internal noise I'd lived with for decades. You see, for some of us, calm doesn't feel safe in our body. Stillness feels threatening. Joy feels like it might vanish at any second. So we tense up, we sabotage, we rush back into the chaos we know how to survive in. So how does painting interrupt the cycle of inner chaos? Okay, so this is where painting becomes more than just art. It becomes repatterning, relearning, a gentle rebellion against everything we were taught to ignore. And this is huge because when you paint, you have to pause. You have to be okay in silence. You have to feel the brush in your hand. You have to notice color, light, texture. You start to trust your senses again. You get out of your head and into your hands, into your heart, and maybe, just maybe, you feel a subtle shift, a tiny thread of joy, a flicker of ease, the softness of breath you didn't realize you were holding. Here are direct examples of healing in the creative process. Here are some moments to look for when painting. Moments your body might be whispering, "You're okay, stay here." Now, when you lose track of time, that's presence. Your body is no longer anticipating danger. When you choose color to paint with based on what feels good, not what makes sense, that's self-trust. You're not seeking permission. When you breathe more deeply as you paint your background, that's your nervous system regulating without you even realizing it. When you make a mistake and you don't panic, that's emotional resilience. Safety doesn't require perfection, remember that. And when the process becomes more important than the actual result, that's healing, that's wholeness. Now, here's a personal story. There was a time when I didn't know what calm felt like. I only knew how to perform peace, how to smile, be productive, stay busy. There's a difference between peace and performance. Until one day I painted a portrait. Soft, intimate, personal. It was a connection to another being, and I loved it. And something in me exhaled, not just my body, but my soul. That painting didn't just show me peace, it taught me how to heal, how to feel it, how to trust it, how to stay, not to run, to stay with all that inner calmness. So, in closing, if you ever struggle to trust peace, to sit in calm without flinching, you are not alone. And you're not broken, by the way. Your body is just waiting for you to allow it to feel that new rhythm, to feel safe in joy, to come home. And maybe, just maybe, art can be the door that leads you back to yourself. If this spoke to you, pick up a brush. Let your hands speak. Let your heart breathe. And most of all, be present in your new self. Stay with that joy. Feel that calmness. Okay, so why is it important to talk about peace and calmness within the body? I had a really interesting conversation that I thought I wanted to then share with you guys and give you a little bit more in-depth understanding of how our body works. And if you caught my first episode of Art Talk, and you'll find that in my playlist, go to my playlist section, you can find it there. I mentioned one of the most important things that is, everybody should know is how our body works, how our body, mind, brain connection all link together, and how we function as a machine, because that's what we really are, an incredible, sophisticated piece of equipment that I don't think people have fathomed how sophisticated we are. Now, when we learn about that, that's one aspect of it. But when you understand that, you really begin to understand why you haven't allowed peace, joy, safety to live and be felt in your body. And I had this conversation literally this morning, and I thought, what a great idea to do a quick discussion, or not so quick, but at least a discussion to share with everybody out there regarding your artwork. I wanted to highlight first and foremost that when you live in a certain energetic constraint or a certain energetic frequency, you start to think that that is how things should be. You start to identify with that frequency. And most importantly, you start to feel that that's normal and quote unquote safe. And so once we live in that frequency, and for most people, it happens to be hypervigilance, it happens to be deep emotional tension, hyper negativity, and a barrage of other limiting emotions. So when you find that we live in that deep, hypervigilant, negative, emotional muck and mire, that's what our body is used to. And we think that that's normal. We think that that's actually what we're used to. And we convince ourselves, and this all happens, by the way, on a deep psychological level, we convince ourselves that that is normal, and it's far from it. Now, I can tell you with certainty and with absolute knowing that this is something that I had placed my body through, thinking that that hypervigilance, that deep emotional burden was how I was to function. And what I realized, and it was a real hairline difference, that when things like peace and resilience and safety and joy showed up in my life, they became the enemy to the body. Because if the body has never felt what peace is, what safety is, well, the body was going to reject that into its vibrational makeup, because it now considered that to be the enemy. I know it's absolute paradox and it's absolute nonsense. But when you have such deep awareness of what that feels like, you pretty quickly start to learn and discern at what level your body was vibrating at. And you stop that pretty much immediately. Because the moment you bring a light into something dark, it now becomes a choice of whether or not you choose to stay with it or not. Now, how has this all come about? By the way, I wanted to also reiterate to everybody that all my discussions are as a result of embodiment, not just idea discussions. And that's really quite rare. And I say rare because there are people that speak from experience and there are people that share their information from a knowledge ideology point of view. And I can tell you with all truth and absolute transparency, whilst I didn't want to experience many things, all of my discussions come from inner embodiment, inner knowing, absolute 100% experience. And like I said, most of the time, I wish I never went through all of this. But I started to understand very quickly that there was a reason for it, that eventually I'd be at a point where I could be and hope that I am a beacon of light, a moment that I can spark someone to be able to shift something within them. So, like I said, all of my discussions come from a deeper embodiment versus just a idea discussion. Now, why I'm a huge advocate for recommending to anyone that's willing to do it, to be honest, to start creating, to paint, to get into your studio, is because art provides an incredible foundation for self-awareness. As I mentioned, when you go into a studio and you become aware of some deep emotional limiting belief, and you're able to then not react to that's happening within you, that's real emotional resilience. And you learn through the process of painting self-trust, self-worth, you learn courage, you learn how to not be bothered by small things. And then you also learn that mistakes are inevitable in life, and it's really how you react that matters more so than what's actually coming toward you, because your reaction to something is what determines your experience more so than what the experience is, because it's how you define something that's important versus what something coming to you was intended for you by somebody else. Because remember, we can only control how we react to something and nothing really outside of that. I think one of the most important processes in this whole process of developing self-awareness and know thyself, and that whole statement, I think, is probably the most profound statement, know thyself, that we can hold on to. Because once you understand how the physiological body, brain, and mind function, you understand that the only important thing that you need to have dominion over are your emotions. Your emotions are the catalyst of creating everything in your life. And when you understand the power of those emotions and the energetic frequency that they carry, it really does create an incredible sense of stillness and peace within you. So, where do you start? For me, this process of looking within started a long time ago. In earnest, it started 16 years ago, but probably the first time I received a piece of information, which was back in 1999, I was given a book by my college friend, and that was the book by Gregory M. Peck, The Road Less Traveled and Beyond. And I've read that book more times than I can count, but I must say, in honesty, that I didn't quite know it. The difference between knowing and understanding something are polar opposites. When you know something, you truly know it. It just does not tilt you off your perch. When you believe or understand something, it comes still with a layer of doubt. But in truth, when did this then process start for me? That was back in 2009. And I started off firstly aligning again with people and with teachers that were doing the work themselves, that have done the work themselves. I started aligning with writers, teachers, speakers that went through this process, and they themselves now spoke from a point of embodiment. Now, the first person that I absolutely loved, that was my, go-to person back then, was Wayne Dyer. And I think I've mentioned him before. I read every single book that he's written. I still have all his books. I purchased probably about 4 sets of podcasts that he created on CDs. They were CDs back then. And it was 9 CDs in per pack. And I remember loading up my car that could take 6. He had a 6 CD stacker, and I would listen to him going to work, coming home. And whenever I was at appointments with customers, I would constantly bombard my brain with his work. And from there, what started to happen is that I then was guided, and you start to see synchronicities, which is amazing. I was guided to the next teacher and the next and the next, up until I got to a level where now I was starting to see how I was able to create something simply through the process of thinking and feeling, thinking and feeling. And again, the power of that is, it's an incredible discussion to talk about the magnetic power of the heart and the electromagnetic power of our brain, and how the two together absolutely work magic. But fast forward since 2009, and I would say lovingly, my cognoscenti, I will let you look up that word, is Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I have done his work for a very long time. I've gone through his books, his process, his podcasts, and I absolutely employ a lot of his ideology, meditations, and all the sorts. I then have gone into learning Qigong, because that's then inviting energy into my body and making sure that my body is connected to frequency that I instill through the meditation. So all of these practices really have become a way of life for me. And art is now the foundation of allowing all that has been embodied and integrated within this physical, psychological container of mine to come out through my artworks. So I urge you with all my heart that this process of learning to know yourself, yes, it might be something that, by the way, it's not pretty, and you will come up against yourself quite frequently. And if anyone tells you that getting or raising your consciousness is this, blissful thing where you close your eyes and meditate your problems away, far from it. It really is a whole lot and a whole gamut of muck and mire on every single level: physical, spiritual, psychological, emotional. And when you come to a point in your life when you want to have something different, you will absolutely not care about any of those purging moments that come through you once you decide to make change. In this discussion, as I began learning to trust, you see, the thing is, we all are taught that we have to learn how to do something. Well, in actual fact, everything is already within you. You don't need to learn how to trust. You trust in something, don't you? And if that's the case, why don't you trust in you? I mean, that question then is layered with things that have been placed within that container, where you have doubts, when you don't feel comfortable, where you have made a mistake and you don't want to now repeat that mistake because it might bring shame, it might bring ridicule. So learning how to trust is not what you have to do, is understand, why don't you trust yourself? And all the other myriad of gifts that are within us. You don't have to go out there to receive, such as courage, resilience, discernment, um, uh, um, fortitude. You don't have to learn any of those things. We can always sharpen those things and we can always get them to a new level, but they already exist within you. So 16 years being on this journey, and in full transparency, it has been an absolute myriad of internal battles, internal muck and mire to integrate, to release, and to surrender. But I can say with absolute knowing and full heart that it is and has been worth every single second of the time that I have put into being able to now be at this level and speak to everybody here. I also wanted to state that even though it's taken me this long, I still don't just sit back and say, okay, well, I've done everything. I can tell you every day there's a new level that I reach, and I think to myself, how is that possible that I didn't know that a year, 2 years ago? Every time I think that I'm here, I find myself that I'm still yet to learn this much more. And I've learned to love that because I will never know everything. And I certainly know that I still have a lot more to learn, which means I still do the work. Every single day, I still do the work, still do the meditations, journaling, mindful consciousness. In the studio, I pay attention to the little monkey mind that's in there and start to bring awareness as to what exactly is going on in the body, why the body is not feeling comfortable. And so the process still continues. So I've not stopped doing the work just because I can talk about it. Rather, I'm probably even focused more into doing the work because I know there's a lot more to unearth. I have an incredible amount of knowledge that I've gathered, but even so, I feel like I've only learned this much. And whilst I'm able to have a conversation on an incredibly deep level, I'm in awe of just the process of this consciousness, of the process of the expansion, and just how much there is to integrate, to learn, and to expand. I mean, I don't think I'll ever stop doing this work. It's just going to be on a new level and from a different perspective. But what has happened as a result is that I'm excited about it and I'm forever curious what's going to take place in a good way, not in a hyper vigilant, fearful way, which there's a big difference between the two. I really hope that you take that step forward. I trust that this is perhaps your clarion call to creating a shift of change, a change that will last, not just change that will be there on the surface level. Because when you find the depth of your true self, you'll find that your boundaries and your values are not going to be violated so quickly by the external environment. And that's where truly peace comes from, also, because you understand that your energy is sacred and it's not going to be diluted through or leaked out through anyone, be it circumstances, people, places, and things. Creating this kind of content is sacred. I value it more than I could explain to you. And if you'd like to support this work, the work that I'm doing going forward, please feel free to support the channel. There is a donation button in this, I think it's below, and feel free to donate whatever you feel is a worthy amount for this channel and for my ability to go forward and create more of this work. And I also want to state quite clearly that I don't advocate being someone that has a professional degree or a professional stamp of approval from organizations that give those permission slips. Certainly, I'm sharing my life and I'm sharing the processes that have worked for me, but I do not advocate that this is going to be something that's going to work for everybody. If you are struggling, if you need a much deeper level of support, by all means, do seek professional advice and take that step forward that they might be able to guide you to self-trust, inner peace, safety, comfort, and everlasting joy. I thank you all for tuning in, and I thank you for taking the time to consider these ideas that perhaps might have sparked something within you where you can begin a new chapter in your journey of your ever creating and expanding book. It is important to remember that you truly are one of one in this entire world. No matter what anyone tells you, your uniqueness is incredibly authentic. And by knowing that and remembering that, then you begin to express and expand more of who you are. Remember, while you're in this world, you are the true light of this world. Be that version of you. Be the authenticity that is full love within you. Until next time, guys. Bye.